So thanks for showing up here for the post-lunch presentation. Basically, for like the next probably 20-30 minutes, I'm going to talk about how Ally has been rolled out at a few other institutions across the country, like yourself, but also dive into the data. So one of our members of the Ally team, his name is Dr. John Scott. He's our community manager. So he's been lucky enough that he's been able to travel around the country and actually talk to institutions like yourself that have implemented Ally, learn about how they're adopting it, what the challenges are. He also presents data back to them, so on usage of your own students and faculty, about how they're engaging with Ally. But what I'm going to do today is give you a kind of a 20,000-foot view of. We did some data studies back in the first semester in the fall of 2018, and there's some really good insight in there about how faculty are engaging with the feedback in the Ally tool, which everybody here is familiar with, I'm sure, and then also the students and how they're interacting with the alternative formats, possibly some trends that we're starting to see in there, but mainly just stories. Hopefully some of these will resonate with you, and you might want to share some of your own as we go through. And then also, quick commercial right after this at, I think it's 2:15. If anybody wants to hang out and talk about ways to remediate scanned documents, scanned PDFs, and learn about those and the challenges with those, I'm going to be running a quick workshop on that. And if you want to follow along with any of the content that I'm sharing today, you can go to that short URL that you see below the hashtag. And I also have the 2 scanned documents that I'm going to use in the workshop folder there. So you can take a look at that. So inclusive digital learning at scale. If you attended John Jones's keynote, he talked about this problem of scale. Scaling out accessibility across all your courses for all your students and all your faculty, big challenge. The barriers that we're faced in the digital learning space, this is the ultimate facepalm. So does everybody here know what a scanned document is, a scanned PDF? So it has 0 accessibility, right? So not only can a screen reader not do anything with it, and if you see these in your Cowley courses, it'll be a big 0 there. You open these up, the guidance. But sighted users can't do a lot with them either. They can't, I'm sighted, I can't search it. I can't annotate it, I can't cut and paste. A lot of times, as you see here, you've got creases. This is a poorly scanned document, it's crooked. You also have, in a lot of cases, low contrast, poor contrast in the document. Sometimes the leading is kind of wavy. So even a student that has sight and maybe has dyslexia, this is also going to be a problem, right? So the barriers to accessing content in the digital space is what we should always be concerned about, and ways to improve, continually improve that content. And Ally is just one of those tools. In the Q&A with some of John's later talks in here this morning, people are getting, we're getting questions about scores, how Ally scores things and how that may not jive with the pedagogy in your classes. And one thing I want to make clear is, Ally is there to guide you and help you continually improve your content. It's not a be-all, end-all. In fact, the checks that it does are very binary. If anybody here is in computer science or any of the STEM technologies, it's literally a binary check against the checklist, okay? So we leave the human element to the experts in your subject matter field to decide how you're going to remediate further some of the problems that Ally finds, but in a way that doesn't take away from the acquiring of knowledge by your students. Okay, so that's like really important key concept. So I want to step back here a little bit. So how long have you had Ally running? would be like your second semester, or has it been longer than that? Maybe like third, yeah. So maybe implemented a year ago, or yeah, okay. So I want to go back in time a little bit. This is before Cowley was even out and available in the LMS. So we went out and we did a data study, and we looked across all the, a lot of the institutions, thousands of institutions, several hundred thousand courses and documents, and we wanted to get a sense of the baseline problem, right? So a lot of the same work that Ally does automatically today with your report that's on the back end of Blackboard, right? We looked across, 700,000 courses, 21 million files, and this was sort of the problem space that we saw. So you can see up here, we found out of that sample, almost 13% of that content were scanned PDFs. Pretty high number of untagged PDFs, contrast issues, document stop headings, and then obviously this one, which is sort of like the low-hanging fruit of accessibility, images without alt text, right? So that gave us a basis for a data sample to then go out and finish designing the Ally product and integrating it into the learning environment. So you'll see a lot of these. You all recognize these, some of the big challenges that we saw even prior to rolling out Ally, just out talking to institutions. So we already talked about a lot of the barriers, putting content in your courses and not having any idea about the impact it's having on any student who might be accessing it. Instructor buy-in, I don't need to tell you that. You're all here. Hopefully you've bought into the concept, right? That's a huge challenge. I will say one thing, because John mentioned it earlier. He made reference to a couple of the big R1s, research institutions like Berkeley, MIT. They're still struggling with this, right? But I do have some good news to share. So recently, we were on tour. John Scott was on tour out at Berkeley and spent several days with the faculty there, academic leaders there. They have it now rolled out successfully at Berkeley, and they have yet to get pushback from those faculty and those professors there at UC Berkeley. So doing this at scale is very challenging, very difficult, getting everybody in a room. I applaud you all for taking the time to be here today to be part of this culture change. But the feedback that we're getting in mass out there across the country has only been positive. Okay, and I think this goes back to the idea of continual improvement. 100% perfect that should always be the aspiration, but that's not the reality of it. As long as you can stay engaged in this idea and engage in the tools that you have available to you in your courses, in the digital learning space, that's important, and that is positive, and that is huge for the cultural change you're trying to make here. So that will still be a challenge, and I know it's still a challenge for a lot of you potentially, or possibly in your head. The other thing with that challenge that we had was we wanted to deal with the diverse set of students that are accessing your learning environments, right? And not just students that maybe have disclosed a disability, but like I said before, any student, or even their life situation. They're a commuter student, they're a non-traditional student. They're studying physics versus biology versus humanities. Their socioeconomic situation. I mean, the list goes on. Their family situation. And so hopefully your students are starting to take to, like we're seeing across the country, and I'll show some of the data, they're starting to take to this idea of personalization. You're putting out instructional material for them to consume and acquire knowledge, but we're also providing them a personalized experience to consume the content in the context that they're currently in. That could be while I'm taking a break at my job. It could be while I'm leaning back on the couch at night studying for a quiz or an exam tomorrow. Different students learn different ways. You're putting out your content in a specific way. Hopefully you're making it more accessible, but we want to provide students choice and equity and diversity in how they want to learn. And so these are some big, huge challenges that went into the design of Ally. And then if it's not clear already, there's three parts to the Ally solution. We've already talked about the faculty guidance panel that you get in your courses that have Ally turned on. The student alternative formats, huge. Just talked about that. And then the report. And I've got a quick note about the product roadmap. So if anybody hasn't seen this yet, so on the back end of Blackboard, the administrators have access to a report. And it's really just designed to help the institution show progress and see where they're falling down, what are the big challenges, what are the gaps, what are the top issues, what are the most frequent, most severe issues, right? And then be able to prioritize that and then put together training, put together events like this where you can do deep dives and really try to move the needle. Well, later this year, we're going to be providing a summary for every course. And so this can be made available right inside of your course. So, you know, when you go into Blackboard, you've got your course tools. You'll be able to go into the report section and be able to pull up a quick summary of your course. So right now, as everybody hopefully knows, you've got those accessibility indicators next to each piece of content. And if you wanted to know how you were doing it on a high level, you'd have to contact an administrator, right? So we're going to make that available to be turned on in the course for you. And what that's going to do is provide you with a high-level summary. So instead of digging into every nook and cranny of your course, you can get a very high-level summary about, you know, how many files do I have, what's my overall score, what's low, what's medium, what's high, and potentially even, you know, where I need to go to find these things, right? So more knowledge to empower you about how to make more continual improvement to your content inside of your course. So we're really excited about that, and that'll be coming out in the second half of this year. So we roll Ally out. It's been out for about 27, 30 months, something like that. So rolled it out around the beginning of 2017. So right now you're among 500 institutions worldwide that have Ally deployed, several different countries. 20 million courses have been processed, 500 million content items. So we're coming up on about 500 million content items being processed. If it wasn't apparent before, Ally uses machine learning. So it does use a slice of AI, it uses machine learning, and over time, the Ally database, all that content that's being contributed by you, those other institutions, is all going into an algorithm, and it's being trained, and it's learning. It's picking up on patterns. It's learning about how faculty interact with the guidance, how they make improvements. It's learning about what students like and don't like, what they engage with, what they don't engage with in the alternative format. It's finding out that when you make this fix to your original and it can improve the delta of your accessibility for that document to a certain level, it's taking that into account. When you load some crazy document that Ally's never seen before, but then it sees another one like it, another one like it, another one like it, it starts to learn, starts to train. The scoring gets better, the guidance gets better, and the alternative formats ultimately get better for the students. Okay? So machine learning, AI, running behind the scenes. Some might call it crowdsourcing to an extent where we're looking at all this information that's coming in to the LMS, and Ally is able to be more intelligent about accessibility because of it. Okay, so that's just a little insight into kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So I already talked about the tour. That's actually John, and he doesn't have that bus. He's Someday he's hoping to get it, so that was just sort of photoshopped in there for some of the promotion. But I think at some point this could be a great location for an Ally on tour. John's done, he started this a couple months ago, and I think he's gone to 9 different institutions across the country already, all different sizes, community colleges, big four-year universities in big cities, all run the gamut. And so that might be something that we promote to you potentially for later in the year or sometime next year, where John will actually show up. He'll do some workshops. He'll sit down and interview you. He also does podcasts. He does videos. All that is online in the Ally user group. I'll share the URL with you at the end of the presentation. So you can actually hear from some actual faculty and administrators right now about how they're adopting Ally. And then he'll actually look into the database and curate your data. He'll show you, what's resonating with faculty on campus at Cowley, what's resonating with students on campus at Cowley in terms of the alternative format. He'll really break that down for you, and that's a community event that you can all get involved with. So that's really important. And it's kind of hard to see here, but we also have some kind of fun marketing. Go green, dude, red is dead, is one of the taglines. It's pretty cool stuff. So I encourage you to get on the Ally user group and consume some of that content. So real quick, before I dive into some of the hard data, we've also seen some observations of Ally in action. And I'm starting to see a lot of these here, just in the few hours that I've been here today. So we already talked about increasing student autonomy and choice. So going beyond just accessibility, John talked about serving populations and being more proactive. What about providing choice and equity and diversity about how students want to learn? So that's something that we're seeing, a message that we're seeing being put out on campuses that have Ally. Cultural shift for instructors, huge. I don't need to explain that. That's happening as well. And the fact that you're all here today and you care about this topic, I think speaks volumes about that. But then we also want to be strategic, and we want to be able to scale and eliminate those barriers constantly. And we talked about those barriers to accessibility. We talked about the scanned PDF example at the beginning. That everybody's involved in that, and we're seeing a lot of gains there as well. Obviously, this piece, there's a lot of potential for this at other institutions that want to adapt Ally, and then how you want to grow with it, because now we have the data. We talked about the report. Not only do we have it on the back end for the admin, we'll soon have it for you as well. Now you can start engaging your admins with the report. What does this mean? How do I interpret this? And all the while, you're going to be learning not so much the tactical stuff, right? Like we'll do in the workshop, or that you might learn in a training session about how to remediate, but strategically, when I'm going into a new term to teach a course and you're doing the course copy, what should I be thinking about at a very high level? What patterns or trends have I seen previously with my course? And now I'm about to teach a new section of it, and I just have more of a strategic mindset about accessibility. And having that instructor level report is going to help with that. This is really what we're starting to see. And that's how we help you scale accessibility out. Let's talk about a couple stories here real quick. CSU Fresno. So Cal State, this is actually a vice provost, and the key term here, you don't have to read the quote, is how Ally provides a platform to launch conversations about accessibility and how that rolls up to student success. So they've really embraced it on their campus as a way to get people to start talking about accessibility. And it's pretty apparent the way Ally is designed is it's pretty easy to start a conversation about accessibility with your peers or with other people here at Cowley, because it's right there in your face when you go into the course, right? It's not something that used to be hidden away, mysterious. There's one person at the college that knows about it, and you have to go to them, and then they become a bottleneck. We really want to open this up. And so the way we've designed Ally, we feel creates those conversations and then rolls that all up to student success. Chico, CSU Chico, these two guys are rock stars. This is Jeremy Olguin and I think David Rowe, I believe. I got those names right. So they're some of the learning technologists, and they took on the implementation of Ally. And one of the things that they saw was, in addition to all the things that we already talked about, being able to provide alternative formats automatically for students, the fact that those alternative formats are just sitting out there while you all are thinking about ways to improve your original content, just by having those out there for, let's say, Office docs, Word docs, PowerPoints, even PDFs, they're able to cut down content remediation time by 25%. Now, their definition of remediation is continual improvement. Remediation does not get caught in this idea that remediating something means it has to go all the way up to 100% and be perfect, okay? But what we can do, and you'll see this in the workshop this afternoon if you want to stick around, is you can use that guidance in those alternatives that Ally provides to beat the scan man, and to improve those scores. But while you're doing that, we can have alternatives out there that are more accessible for the students straight away, just automatically. And so that's a really important point. So promoting those alternative formats are hugely important. And then this is kind of the last catch-all one before we'll get into some of the data. Tacoma Community College. So they're part of a big technical college system there in the state of Washington. And they're one of our champions of Ally up there in that system. And they really feel like the fact that they can provide the alternative formats directly to the students without the instructor having to get involved, at least initially, has moved the needle for them, has been hugely important. And they're also going to be doing next semester some gamification of accessible content. And I'll might share that slide with you a little bit later, but it's already ingrained in their culture, and now they're going to actually start having some friendly competitions amongst their faculty there at Tacoma. So pretty exciting stuff. So the first place I want to start on the data side is with the student impact. So this data sample was last fall, so it was August to September. And we went out globally and we looked at really two key metrics. We wanted to look at alternative format engagement, but in the context of total engagement and total number of alternative format downloads. So basically what this means is, in that term globally, we had a little over 1 million students actually opening up the alternative formats, opening up that modal window that has that list of alternative format. And then we had a total of about 500,000 actual downloads. So basically what this means is 1 out of every 2 students that engaged with the alternative format panel actually went ahead and downloaded 1 or more of those formats. That's about a 50% conversion rate just on the engagement there. So that was a huge eye-opener for us. We expected engagement to be quite high, especially amongst the institutions that have promoted the alternative formats. But to get a 50% conversion rate in an online resource on the web is huge. You just don't see that every day in a lot of the tools that are out there. So that was really encouraging. We dig into the data a little bit further. Now we're looking at, okay, the alternative formats and what types of downloads we're seeing for those different types of original documents that Ally treats, right? So we'll start with the Word doc. Obviously, in our sample, that was the most, it was the biggest file, most popular file type for original content in that data sample. And you can see here a few trends that we're starting to see already. Obviously, the tag PDF is huge. You know, if you don't know this already, what we can do with the tag PDF is actually provide better contrast. We can actually improve the contrast of the document straight away. So if there's poor contrast in that original, we can improve that automatically with the tag PDF. Makes it better for printing, better for students that maybe have low sight, that sort of thing. And it's tagged too. So it provides structure for screen readers as well, if that's the modality that they want to consume. We also saw in this one almost 1,900 MP3 downloads. This is the MP3 is a pretty popular format for people to talk about. It gets people excited about being able to listen to the content and then have that conversion happen automatically. But to actually see it in numbers, I think is pretty impactful. And so we saw 1,900 of those for Word docs. PowerPoint presentations, you see the numbers for that, actually trending pretty close to the Word docs in terms of downloads. But I want to skip to the PDF here. I think this one was really impactful. So PDF originals, about 91,000. You can see we had 11.7 thousand, almost 12,000 of the OCR PDF alternative downloaded. But look at this MP3 number, over 6,000 on this one. But this is the one that really gets me excited, is the HTML, 68,000. 68,000 downloads of the HTML alternative for the PDF. So what does that tell us? That tells us a couple things. Students are mobile. They're on lots of different devices. They want a frictionless experience when they're consuming content, and having the HTML alternative provides that to them. The other nice thing about that, and this goes right in line with the Ally story in terms of how it generates these alternatives. If you don't know this already, but we base the audio alternative, the MP3, off of the HTML. So the fact that we had such a high number of students engaging in the HTML format and the MP3, that's a testament to the technology that's behind the scenes for Ally. So we're producing high quality HTML, more accessible alternatives that are highly tagged and structured semantically. And then off of that, we're able to create the MP3 audio conversion that they can listen to. So that was really promising when we saw that. It sort of validated a lot of the technology work that we're doing behind the scenes. And you're starting to see here on this, as we go down the chart here, EPUB as well. Not as high in some of the other areas, but for PDFs, EPUB is pretty high. So e-readers, you know, I can download this, I can take notes, I can do more reflective learning on an e-reader with the EPUB version. As some of you may know, that e-readers have their own accessibility features built in as well. So imagine if I had dyslexia, I could download it onto this alternative onto an e-reader. I can change the font, change the foreground and background colors, provide a better experience. So very promising there. We had a small sample of just straight up HTML files that instructors were uploading to the LMS. And for this one, we had the highest number was EPUB and MP3. But I think for me, when I look at this, the headline is HTML and MP3 for Word, but especially for for PDF. I think those are huge. And then this is this is kind of a recap of, we looked at some stories, we dove into the data a little bit, the usage data for the students. But ultimately, at least I feel, and this is what I'm hearing out in the market from other institutions that are using Allies, that the big payoff here is that if we can provide easily these different modalities for students to consume content, ultimately we're going to be going down the road towards improving study habits, improving retention of the information, and then ultimately learning. Now, taking what Ally does and then extrapolating that out and then seeing what the impact on learning outcomes will be, that's going to take us a couple more years and a lot more data to really, because that's more of a linear study. But you can start to see sort of the signs of that in just the way that students are taking up to these different modalities. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So that's the impact of Ally on students in those alternative formats. And then we'll go to Chico and Jeremy one more time. This is actually a real quote, and that's a real student that commutes on the train to school. And she basically said, "You gave me part of my life back." And she was referring specifically to, well, to the alternative formats in her course that Ally provided, but ultimately the audio format. You can see she's got the earbuds here. She's sort of looking out the window on her way, on her commute home, on her commute there. Maybe she's going to work. Whatever the case may be, wherever she is, she can get the content the way that she needs to consume it at that moment in her life. So pretty impactful, real world example here, how Ally is making a difference there. Any questions about that before I get into the instructor? I want to hear from you a little bit. Are you promoting these alternative formats? Are you getting students coming to you saying, "Hey, this is great that you guys have this," or I really like the audio, I really like the HTML. I mean, have you even started really promoting that yet? Kind of talk to me. Okay. So it's literally like sitting there, but it's just not really socialized right now. Okay. Okay. So I think that, and we don't even need an Ally tour here to do this, but I think I would say in the next couple of months, it might be a good time to look at your usage data, which is something that we can easily generate, and look at it and see what some of those trends are for engagement right now. And then that might inform the way that you might promote those out. So in other words, if it looks like, let's say that a particular type of alternative format is very popular in physics discipline, or in biology, or in English, then that might be something that you could use in promoting it out to a certain population of students, for example. So we're open to that. Actually getting a usage data report that we can share with you. And that might help inform and make you more comfortable about promoting these alternative formats out to your students. Make sense? Okay. So, instructor. So here, we looked at engagement, but now we're looking at it from the Ally panel. The panel that you open up from those accessibility indicators. Everybody's seen those, right? Okay. So this one, we had about a 33% conversion rate. So we had 381,000 and some odd engagements in that feedback panel with that sample that I talked about. And then off of that, we were able to track, based on those engagements, on those specific content items in the course, how many fixes did we get through the instructor feedback? It was about one out of every three. So 33% engagement. So again, we expected, if you're just putting it in front of a instructor's face in the Blackboard interface, they're going to pay attention to it eventually, but we're really happy with engagement rate, and we want to keep that climbing, keep it going. So like these two studies, that looking at the engagement for students on the alternative formats in Ally, and then for the instructors on the guidance panel, those would be two of the takeaways from a usage data report that we could do for you, because it would give you sort of a baseline right now about how you and your peers are taking up to the Ally interfaces inside of the course. Anybody have any questions or concerns or challenges right now that you're dealing with in your courses where you have Ally enabled? It could be success stories or just challenges or things that you haven't been able to wrap your head around. Anybody want to share?
Sure. I had a Word document that was like at an 88%, like that, and I went in to make it better, and with the suggestions I had on how to make Word accessible, I uploaded it again, and it came back at like 50%.
So yeah, you actually made some changes, and then it ended up being worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen. That can happen. Again, the quality of the quality of the score, the assessment that we can make of that document, and the quality of the conversion for the alternative formats, will be impacted by the quality of the input, the original. So there's going to be outlier cases like that. I'd actually be interested to actually see an example of that, the before and after. And that's the type of thing that we have institutions that actually send us this stuff. We have some tools on the back end that we can run that sort of are behind, even at a deeper level than Ally. And we can actually see if when you made changes in the Word doc, were there any artifacts that were introduced that might have stopped up the Ally algorithm, that sort of thing. And then what we do is we document all that, and we actually then will adjust the algorithm and improve the algorithm so that that doesn't happen again, or the likelihood of that happening again is very less. So I'd be curious to see this actually. I mean, I'll give you my card at the end, and if you want to send me, if you still have it, like the before and the after, we'll take a look at it. Because that's the type of, because again, remember my first slide or early slide when I talked about machine learning. It's not just the automated nature of that. There's also a human element to training an algorithm. And sometimes you need to inform it with some data that you've collected as a human. And then that gets factored in as well. So I'd love to get that from you. Anybody else?
I have a little question. I may not know this stuff, okay, but you talked about the number of MP3s being downloaded. Did we know if those were things that were created by the instructor, or if they were things that were available from like the textbook publisher and then made available to Blackboard, or?
Those were made available by Ally.
Okay.
Automatically. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So let's say that I have a publisher reading from a publisher. It's in PDF, right? I upload it. Let's say, okay, maybe it's not scanned, but let's say it's tagged PDF. Okay. Ally will create one of the alternatives. Will create as an HTML. Okay. And that's highly tagged semantically. Then we'll use ReadSpeaker behind the scenes to actually do the text-to-speech conversion automatically. It's done in Ally.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So when they download that MP3, they're actually getting a ReadSpeaker conversion from the HTML that Ally creates.
Okay. So if I uploaded an article from my CV, and as long as it has that would be an automatic thing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Now the qualities of the alternatives can be much better if it's tagged. But as you'll learn later today, if you stick around for the next session, Ally can actually do pretty impressive work on the alternative, even with a scanned PDF, because we are OCRing it. We're using AvidFind Reader behind the scenes to understand, extract the text, and then we're creating those alternatives off of it. So it doesn't have to be a tagged PDF, but I think I said earlier, and I hijacked John's session earlier with the microphone once, and I said, you know, the benefit of continually improving your documents is that the alternatives get better automatically, right? So even though Ally, for some scanned PDFs, can do amazing alternatives, for others, maybe not so much, because there's just too much junk in the original. So if you do have a tagged PDF version of it, that's always obviously the best choice, because then the alternatives can be even that much better for the student. So yeah, in theory and in practice, if you had a tagged PDF original, the HTML, the EPUB, the Braille, and the audio should be much more accessible than if you didn't have a tagged PDF.
And then the EPUB that you talked about, is that also done by Ally?
It is.
Know what format that's in, because there are different EPUB formats for different users.
Yeah, so it's just a .pub.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a .pub. We are, I don't think it, I think, is it 3 now? EPUB 3? I can't remember. There's like versions. I don't know the exact version that it is.
Okay.
I know it's not like, you know, 1999, but I'm not sure that it's the most current version. So it's, yeah. The easiest way to test this is download it just on your desktop, and if you're on a Mac, it'll just open it. It'll open it automatically in iBooks, and then I think on a PC you've got to actually download a program, but that will give you sort of a baseline about how it would look in a Kindle, a Nook, an iPad, tablet, that sort of thing. Yeah. So again, instructor engagement, about 1 out of every 3 times we're seeing fixes made based off of that engagement on that content item. No surprise here, I sort of gave this away at the beginning, the low-hanging fruit of images without description. We saw that as the most fixes, and quite frankly, a lot of that is just the interface in Ally. Has anybody done this in Ally? Okay, it's sort of like instant gratification, right? Where, you know, you literally can put the description right in there, hit a button, and then it will reevaluate it and update the score. And so, in addition to it just typically being one of the most frequently detected issues, it's also, you know, the most enjoyable to actually fix or to improve, right? PDF instructor fixes. So this would be, well, we'll get into this here in a little bit as we wrap up here. You know, some instructors might take the OCR alternative that Ally creates and then just immediately replace it back in the Blackboard, and that will improve it. Others will open up Acrobat, they have a license, etc., and they'll tag it. And then you see some of the other ones here too: Word, then PowerPoint, and then a little bit HTML file. And so we already talked about the conversion in terms of what we're seeing globally with that data sample there, about 33%. And then I'm not going to go through all these, but Tacoma was one of the is part of this community and technical college system. But this is an instructor at another school, Olympic College, and we had some great reports back from them. 74% of the instructors report Ally raised their awareness about accessibility. In Olympics specific example, accessibility scores in my 2 classes went from 30% range to 90% range in a term. And you see some of the other ones up there. So we've got a lot of these stories. The The deck for this is in that URL that I'll share at the end as well, if you want to go through all these different stories. And I misspoke a little bit at the beginning. I got this confused with Tacoma, but they've already done gamification with their instructors. But Grand Valley State University up north in the North US here, they plan on doing a friendly competition come next semester based on the Ally scores. So that's become a huge trend that we're seeing with a lot of institutions that rolled out Ally like yourself. And then this is the last slide. I already talked about this before. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, consume any of John's Ally on Tour video content, or just engage with the Ally user group, you can do that at usergroup.ally.ac. And we've got people in there, we've got faculty in there that don't even use Ally yet, but they want to learn more about accessibility. There's a lot of research that's published out there, both by our team at Ally and by faculty and learning technologists at other institutions. So it's a great resource. You can do some networking in there for other events that you might go to about accessibility. So I do encourage you to look into user group. And then our product managers for Ally are also in here. So you can actually ask questions of the product team right in here, and they'll respond to you inside of the community inside of here. And then if I go back here, if anybody wants to pull the presentation, you can go to learntim.co/Cowley A11Y, and this PowerPoint will be in there. And then the workshop files that I'm going to go over in a minute will be out there as well. So, yeah.
You have mentioned some of the different things, having like a little that have the green and yellow and red and all that.
Yeah.
The module pages in Blackboard, or just the main screen under course content, when you list things there, that doesn't give you a score. So
okay.
Does that mean that Blackboard is already automatically making that readable, or?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about just the overall HTML of the page, right? Is that what you're talking about? So not specific files, just the view of the page?
Yeah, like under course content, you can go and create a module page, and you can just put your objectives in there, type them all in, and then it just comes up as part of the module page, but it doesn't put a red, green, yellow like your attachments.
Do any of the attachments or files that you put inside of those learning modules, those should all have accessibility indicators?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think you do an attachment inside of it.
Okay.
So if I just have a module page that lists my objectives,
yeah.
It doesn't give it.
Okay, yeah, all right, so yeah, I understood. We're talking about not necessarily file-based content, but just content that you author.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's being tracked and scored in the back end in the report. There is something that we're going to be bringing out in the roadmap that will provide accessibility indicators and alternatives for that type of content, but that's not available yet in the product. So today it's just file-based content, right? Images, Office docs, PDFs. But our full intention is to provide that same level, those indicators, for the HTML content you might author in the editor. And that's going to be coming. Yep. Because we already know how accessible it is, because we're tracking it in the report. We just need to make that the Ally indicators available in those little blocks. Good question. Anything else? Good? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.